Here are the top stories for today, October 2, 2020. U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump tested positive for COVID-19. Malacanang counts on the timely passage of 2021 budget amid the House speakership issue. President Duterte most hopeful on the vaccine made in China. And the Department of Trade and Industry wants to lift curfew for restaurants and fast food chains. Good day, I'm William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump tested positive for COVID-19. U.S. President Donald Trump in a tweet confirmed that he and First Lady Melania Trump had tested positive for COVID-19. This after one of his closest aides, Hope Hicks, became infected with the disease. White House physician Sean Conley said the President and First Lady are both well at this time and they plan to remain at home within the White House during their convalescence. Trump earlier said he had been spending a lot of time with Hicks. He has held large political rallies with no mask or social distancing requirement, saying rallies did not pose a threat of his contracting the virus. Malacanang says Metro Manila may soon shift to modified general community quarantine or MGCQ by November as the number of COVID-19 cases decrease in the region. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said no one can predict when the COVID-19 rate of infection will slow down. He said it is more important to ensure that the country's healthcare system is not overwhelmed.
It is not an impossibility dahil talaga naman po napababa natin. No? Pero nasa kababayan pa rin natin yan sa Metro Manila. Alam na po natin ang dapat gawin. Mask, hugas, iwas, gaya ng sinasabi ng ating presidente doon sa ating Ingat Buhay para sa Kabuhayan campaign.
Malacanang said it is counting on the timely passage of 2021 budget more than the issue of House speakership. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque earlier said the leadership in Congress is an internal issue and that Malacanang respects the decision of its members. More on this from Marita Moay.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque reiterates to lawmakers the need to pass the proposed 4.5 trillion peso budget for 2021 without delay. This amid the House speakership row between the current House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano and Congressman Lord Alan Velasco.
Ulitin ko po ang paninindigan ng ating presidente, yung pagpili po ng liderato ng Kamara ay isang internal matter para sa Kamara de Representante at rinirespeto naman po ng presidente ang naging desisyon ng Kamara na ibinasura po yung pagre-resign ni Speaker Alan Cayetano. Ang bilin po niya, kinakailangan mapasa talaga ang budget sa lalong mabilis na panahon dahil nakapaloob po sa budget yung ating COVID-19 response. At kung magkakaroon po tayo ng reenacted budget, ay yung budget sa taong ito po, wala pong COVID-19 response dyan dahil wala pa naman pong COVID.
Roque maintains that the House speakership row is an internal matter of the House of Representatives. He said President Rodrigo Duterte respects the decision of the House of Representatives. Duterte earlier said he wanted his two supporters to honor the term-sharing agreement wherein Cayetano would serve as the House Speaker until October 2020. Velasco would supposedly assume the position from October 14 until the 18th Congress ends in 2022. About Duterte's meeting with Cayetano, Roque said it only coincided with his scheduled meeting with Deputy Speaker Eddie Villanueva. Meanwhile, Marinduque Representative Lord Alan Velasco called Cayetano's moves as political maneuverings and theatrics. He said this derails the passage of the proposed 4.5 trillion peso national budget for 2021. Cayetano offered to step down in a speech before fellow lawmakers on Wednesday, but the House plenary voted to reject his resignation. Budget deliberations was then suspended until Friday. Velasco said the attacks and destruction serve no purpose other than to perpetuate what is a purely personal agenda. He also noted that they committed to pass the budget on October 14. Velasco appeals to his colleagues to uphold the dignity of the House of Representatives by being men and women who believe in palabra de honor. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Moahe.
The national government is working to ensure the safety of inmates amid the prevailing pandemic. The National Bilibid Prison for JUAN has quarantine facilities for asymptomatic, mild, and moderate COVID-19 cases.
Meron na po tayong isolation facility na naroon na ibinigay rin po ng ICRC, no? At siyempre po meron din tayong programa sa Board of Pardons and Parole na hangga't maaari palalayain na po natin yung pinakamaraming numero ng mga kwalipikado na mapalaya na para nga po maibsan yung siksikan na kondisyon sa ating mga kulungan dahil kung siksikan, wala pong social distancing.
Roque also said that the possibility of providing electronic visitations for detainees would have to be raised before the DOJ and the Bureau of Corrections. Despite congestion in jails, he said quarantine violators will still face detention. Malacanang said President Duterte is most hopeful about the potential COVID-19 vaccine being developed by China. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, Duterte prefers a China-made vaccine even as several countries are on a race to be the first to come up with a vaccine against COVID-19.
The president is most hopeful with China, but he has also said that Johnson & Johnson is on track. Meron pong latest information on Moderna. Mukha daw pong it has very promising results dun sa kanyang third phase ng clinical trials.
Roque said the government is also coordinating with Russia on potential COVID-19 vaccine Sputnik V since clinical trials will take place in both countries. He also mentioned the potential vaccine being developed in England, but clinical trials were temporarily stopped. Duterte earlier said the government would purchase the most affordable vaccine that would be sold due to budget constraints. He also said he would seek a discount from China and Russia on the COVID-19 vaccines that each of the two countries developed and promised to supply the Philippines with. President Duterte wants to revive the Bataan Nuclear Power Plant or BNPP, but with the consent of the people in the province. Last July, Duterte, through Executive Order Number 116, offered a study on the feasibility of introducing nuclear power in the country's power generation mix. Under the EO, Duterte created the Nuclear Energy Program Interagency Committee to be chaired by the Department of Energy. It aims to develop the nuclear power program in the country, including the possible use of the Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, which is the country's first and only nuclear power plant built during the term of former President Ferdinand E. Marcos. The BNPP never became operational due to alleged safety concerns and corruption issues.
Ang sabi po ni Presidente, start from the ground. Pag-aralan mabuti, but start from the ground. And I take that to mean na kami pong mga taga-Bataan ang dapat konsultahin muna kung gusto nating buksan ang Bataan Nuclear Power Plant.
The Department of Education is all set for the opening of classes on October 5. DepEd's Executive Committee members and Service and Bureau Directors will be in full force on the ground and are scheduled to give live updates on the distance learning during the first day of classes in the different field offices or schools they will visit. There will also be a nationwide simultaneous flag-raising ceremony by 7:30 a.m. to be led by Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones. Filipino teachers will be honored during the program as part of the celebration of World Teachers Day and National Teachers Month. DepEd TV teacher broadcasters Pamela Amor Villanueva of Bagong Silang High School and Jamil Carvajal of T-PAES Integrated School will host the said event. The program will be live-streamed at DepEd Philippines and in various partner government institutions and media organizations in social media. Manila and San Juan City provide learning materials for public school teachers and students, while Valenzuela came up with an online platform for online learning. More on this from Chris Crismundo.
In Manila, some 100,398 tablets were distributed to public school students in preparation for the opening of classes. The city government also provided 11,000 laptops with pocket Wi-Fi for public school teachers. In San Juan City, public school students also received tablets and learning equipment in preparation for the blended and distance learning. This as the Department of Information and Communications Technology provided the city government with 12,500 tablet computers and 1,000 laptops accompanied by 1,000 pocket Wi-Fis, which will be distributed to 9 public elementary schools and 3 public high schools within the city. The DICT has chosen the Pinaglabanan Elementary School to pilot its first digital learning system project. It earlier trained San Juan teachers on the use of the education technology software and navigating the government-issued learning devices. In Valenzuela City, an online streaming school called Valenzuela Live was launched as an alternative to face-to-face classes. Here, the teacher's live stream is held at an off-site classroom, specifically at the Valenzuela School of Mathematics and Science, where teachers are accompanied by an IT technician and a moderator during their live. Mayor Rex Gatchalian said the city will use 2 tracks of online learning systems, including live streaming and Canvas platforms. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Chris Crismun.
Still to come, localized freedom of information is being pushed by PCOO. And DTI wants to lift the curfew on restos and fast food chains. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Sa matinding laban natin sa Coronavirus Disease 2019, sugpuin din natin ang pagkalat ng fake news. Huwag magbahagi ng impormasyon na hindi tiyak ang pinagmulan. I-check mabuti ang source ng balita. Kumuha lamang ng impormasyon mula sa mga official channel ng Department of Health. Huwag magpadala sa maling balita, basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to. Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. In continued efforts to push for government transparency for the public, the Presidential Communications Operations Office urges local government units to implement a localized freedom of information policy. PCOO Assistant Secretary Chris Ablan announced 2 capacity-building projects set by the agency for October. The FOI Project Management Office will be conducting the first virtual 2020 transparency webinar, which will be undertaken with the Department of the Interior and Local Government and the Department of Budget and Management. The Mindanao LGU's leg will be on October 23. Ablan said the conference aims to renew their call for LGUs to localize the FOI program while the FOI bill remains pending in Congress. FOI PMO also partnered with the National Privacy Commission for the first Data Privacy and Freedom of Information Congress last September 22 to debunk issues surrounding FOI and data privacy, especially in the government sector. Tuguegarao City intensifies its quarantine measures on October 3. Meanwhile, Tarlac reports its highest number of recoveries so far. More on these and other news from the provinces from Janice Cabe.
Tuguegarao City will revert from modified general community quarantine to modified enhanced community quarantine starting October 3. Mayor Jefferson Soriano on Thursday said the reversion is due to the rising number of COVID-19 cases with local transmission reports in 19 villages. The MECQ will last for 14 days, but it will be subject to the approval of the governor. From August 26 to September 5, the city had also been placed under MECQ. Meanwhile, Tarlac has logged 41 new recoveries from COVID-19, the highest number recorded in a single day as confirmed by the Department of Health. This brought the total number of recoveries to 239 and lowered the number of active cases to 230. On the other hand, 6 new cases were recorded, bringing the total number of cases to 491. 3 new deaths were also recorded, bringing the total to 22. In other news, the local government of Cebu City welcomed the decision of President Rodrigo Duterte to place the capital city under modified GCQ for another month. In a statement, Mayor Edgardo Labella said Cebu City was able to keep virus transmission down after a month of being under less stringent quarantine measures. The mayor attributed the flattening of the curve in the city to the cooperation of the residents, especially in religiously following the minimum health and safety protocols. Labella issued Executive Order 94, which limits public movement and operations of government and private establishments under the downgraded quarantine status. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Janice Cave.
Almost 200 sugar plantation workers, locally known as sacadas, are soon about to return to work in the sugar fields of Negros Occidental. The Antique Provincial Planning and Development Office said the group belongs to the first batch of more than 1,600 sacadas who came home due to the COVID-19 lockdown last March and April. These sacadas will help in harvesting and milling of sugar cane in 2 haciendas in Cabancalan City for 6 months, as stated in their contract. As mandated by the Department of Labor and Employment, the workers will have to undergo swab tests before they are sent off to work. Aside from the swab test, they will have to undergo the 14-day mandatory quarantine within their living quarters. The first LGU-initiated COVID-19 testing center in northern Mindanao is now open. Christine Lynn Viajante has the story.
The Department of Health's Research Institute for Tropical Medicine has now given the province of Lanao del Norte's RT-PCR biomolecular laboratory the license to operate. The 30 million worth COVID-19 testing lab is located at the old municipal hospital of Kapatagan Town. Its funding came from the Bayanihan grant allocated to provinces by the national government.
This molecular biology laboratory is just a part of the bigger picture in achieving our aspiration of delivering quality, efficient, and effective medical services to the people of the province of Lanao del Norte.
The said biomolecular laboratory can accommodate up to 96 samples a day, and results come out within 8 hours upon processing. Meanwhile, National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. lauded the efforts of the provincial government in its initiatives in responding to the pandemic.
Ako'y masayang-masaya dahil nakita ko na ang Lanao del Norte ay nagpupunyagi. Inyong desisyon na nagkaroon kayo ng COVID-19 laboratory, napakaganda pong desisyon yan. And then maganda po, nakita po namin sa Lanao del Norte, you are collectively, leadership niyo po collective, meaning you are a listening leader, at the same time, you are leading collectively.
Lanao del Norte's biomolecular laboratory is the 6th laboratory in Region 10 and the only one that is initiated by a local government unit. For PNA Newsroom, Christine Lynn Viajante of PIA Iligan City Information Center.
In our business news, the Department of Trade and Industry wants to further relax rules for restaurants and fast food establishments by allowing them to operate 24 hours. Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez said they are asking local government units to lift the curfew hours for food businesses so they could cater to those working the graveyard shift. Although Metro Manila mayors have allowed delivery services to operate for 24 hours, Lopez also wants to relax the rules for dine-in services. Lopez also said the DTI would issue a document that would allow some businesses in the service sector to operate at full capacity even in GCQ areas. This is to bring more workers back to their jobs amid the increasing number of Filipinos experiencing hunger and poverty amid the pandemic. Up next, the DOJ wants to complete the probe on Holo shooting this month. And let us take a look at Boracay's world-class resort island. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Tandaan ang tamang paraan ng paghuhugas at paglilinis ng kamay upang makaiwas sa iba't ibang karamdaman. Basain ng tubig ang mga kamay at sabunin. Unang sabunin ang mga palad at ang likod ng mga kamay. Kuskusin na maigi ang pagitan ng mga daliri at maging ang mga kuko. Isunod ang pagitan ng mga hinlalaki at kuskusin ng paikot ang mga dulo ng mga daliri sa magkabilang palad. Banlawang mabuti ang mga kamay sa malinis na tubig at patuyuin ang mga kamay gamit ang single-use towel o air dryer. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
State prosecutors expect to resolve this month the criminal charges against Jolo police officers involved in the killing of 4 military intelligence officers last June. Senior Deputy State Prosecutor Richard Anthony Fadulion said counter affidavits had been submitted by respondents over a week ago, and prosecutors are awaiting the possible filing of a reply and rejoinder. Charges of murder and planting of evidence were filed by the National Bureau of Investigation for preliminary investigation. The NBI Western Mindanao Regional Office also recommended neglect of duty under the doctrine of command responsibility against the Sulu Police Provincial Director, Police Drug Enforcement Unit Chief, and the Jolo Chief of Police. The 9 relieved policemen are currently under restrictive custody at Camp Krame in Quezon City. The city government of Cagayan de Oro has opened a 60-bed shelter that will care for children in conflict with the law. The shelter, known as Oro Bahay Pag-asa, was built in partnership with the Region 10 Juvenile Justice and Welfare Committee. Ronnie Barros of the RJJWC Secretariat said the shelter will be dedicated to the rehabilitation of child offenders as a way to reintegrate into mainstream society. Bahay Pag-asa forms part of the city's Oro Care Village, which will also house a COVID-19 isolation facility, a boys' town, a mental hospital for the abandoned and neglected, training centers, a chapel, an infirmary, and a covered court. Oliver Egipto, head of the city's Office of Community Affairs, said the facility can also house abused women and the elderly. The continuous opening and rehabilitation of roads in remote areas has helped suppress the movements of the Communist New People's Army in Zamboanga del Sur. Army engineers undertook a road opening and rehabilitation project in Barangays Datu, Tutukan, and Labangon in Dumingag Town, the site of recent clashes between government troops and the rebels. Colonel Emerito Pineda, commander of the Army's 547th Engineer Battalion, underscored the importance of infrastructure projects in helping eradicate insurgency. Once completed, he said the project would cut down NPA recruitment and support, and basic services and government programs would reach isolated communities. Pineda also called on the remaining NPA rebels to surrender. The Philippine Army will deploy 3 more medical teams to Bacolod City to work alongside healthcare workers catering to COVID-19 patients in various hospitals. Each team will have 1 doctor, 4 nurses, and a still unspecified number of aid personnel. Mayor Evelio Leonardia said the 3 teams would replace the 2 teams deployed to the city in the last week of August once the latter's tour of duty ends. The deployment of personnel to Bacolod came as part of the response to Leonardia's appeal for assistance from President Rodrigo Duterte in August. Last month, the Department of Health Central Visayas deployed 50 nurses to Bacolod through the assistance of the Office of the Presidential Assistant for the Visayas. The Philippine National Police says it would respect the rules of local government units in allowing entry of tourists under 21 years old, as well as senior citizens. PNP Deputy Chief for Administration, Lieutenant General Guillermo Eleazar, said it seems logical that there is no age limit as long as senior citizens who will go there have no comorbidities. While noting that the police would not spoil the tourist vacation, he said they would not tolerate non-compliance with minimum health protocols. Under quarantine guidelines, those aged 21 years old and below and the elderly are prohibited from leaving their homes as they are deemed as the most vulnerable to COVID-19. Some LGUs that opened doors to tourists were Tagaytay City and Baguio City, which is limited to accommodating tourists only from the provinces in Region 1 and Boracay Island in Aklan. Boracay, the country's world-class resort island, has opened its shores to domestic tourists, with the Philippine government promoting a safe and gradual tourism revival amid the pandemic. Tourism Chief Bernadette Romulo Puyat said travelers below 21 and above 60 years of age are allowed to enter the island except for those with underlying medical conditions. A visiting tourist must undergo an RT-PCR test and submit several documents online for approval of the Aklan provincial government. Each visitor who is cleared to travel to the island will then be issued a unique personal QR code for monitoring. About 26 tourists came on the first day of reopening, lower than the 95 tourists initially expected. Romulo Puyat is looking at the low turnout as an opportunity for the government to better assess what needs to be improved. She said the safety and well-being of tourists and residents remain the top priority of the Department of Tourism. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump tested positive for COVID-19. Malacanang counts on the timely passage of 2021 budget amid the House speakership issue. President Duterte most hopeful on the vaccine made in China. And the Department of Trade and Industry wants to lift curfew for restaurants and fast food chains. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, check our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo. Good day, stay safe, and happy weekend, everyone.